You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Sports fans, welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am the Jacob Valk, and you're not. You know that I'm going to start with the NFL. But which game? Realistically, I can make the case that I should talk about every single game that happened yesterday. I feel like they're all noteworthy in some way, shape, or form. But I've decided to limit it to the really big games. The games that gave us iconic moments, crazy endings, crazy stat lines, the best of the best. I'll go in the order that they're listed on the Score app. That means I'm going to start with Ravens-Lions. A game that really can't make you feel that good if you're a Ravens fan. I mean, this game really should have been a comfortable win. You're going up against the Lions team that really isn't that great. I think everyone really expected you to win by 2-3 touchdowns. Instead, this was a really close game. I mean, the Lions were in this thing until the bitter end. Now, granted, the Ravens had some big opportunities to make life a little easier for themselves, but Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins were angling for Butterfinger endorsements. And that really upset me because I have Lamar Jackson on my fantasy teams. I have two teams. A team in a regular league and a team in a dynasty league. They both have Lamar Jackson. I got crushed in the regular league. The guy who I went up against had the most points out of anyone in the league. It happens. I'm 2-1. I feel good about my chances in the dynasty league. I'm up by 68 points. The guy who I'm going up against has 4 players left. Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Miles Sanders, and Dallas Goedert. It's certainly possible that he can come back and win, but if I was a betting man, I'd bet on my team. I think I'm going to be 2-1 in both leagues. Yeah, remember that game that I was complaining about that I lost by less than a point? Because of a stat correction involving the Bears defense, I ended up winning by less than a point. Gotta love it. But back to Ravens-Lions. The Lions took the lead with 68 seconds left in the game on a 35-yard field goal by Ryan Santoso. A guy who was only kicking for the Lions because Austin Seibert is on the COVID list. The thing is, though, you left Lamar Jackson with too much time. Now, you almost didn't. Like, this is the big moment in the game to me. You sack Lamar Jackson on first down. Second down, an incomplete pass to Devin Duvernay. Then you sack Jackson on third down. So he's facing 4th and 19. I don't know how many times 4th and 19 has been converted in NFL history, but I'd be willing to bet not many. You could probably count it on one or two hands. I'll say this. The Lions called the right play. They rushed 3. They had someone spying Jackson because he is capable of running for 19 yards. Jackson had to throw it, and he put the ball in an absolutely perfect spot for Sammy Watkins. Bad job by Will Harris there. He was just out of position to stop that pass. So with 3 seconds left, the Ravens have a chance to win the game. Justin Tucker lines up for a 66-yard field goal. To put that into perspective, the NFL record was 64 yards, set by Matt Prater in Denver, the mile-high city where the ball really carries. Tucker attempted this kick in Detroit. Now, we just saw Jamal Agnew return a 68-yard missed field goal, 109 yards for a touchdown. I'm sure people at Ford Field saw that clip. How could you not? It's one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. I'm completely serious, by the way. 109-yard missed field goal return? That's tied for the longest play in NFL history. It's absolutely incredible. Now, there's no risk of a big field goal return because it's the end of the game. It's either hit this field goal or you're flying back to Baltimore a loser. So here's Tucker, the greatest kicker in the NFL today, lining up for an NFL record 66-yard field goal. For the win, he got all of it. It doinked off the crossbar, but it ended up going through the uprights. The field goal was good. The Ravens won in the most improbable way you can possibly imagine. I gotta be honest with you. If I was Dan Campbell, the Lions head coach, I don't think I would shake John Harbaugh's hand. It's nothing against Harbaugh. It's just I'd be too upset. To lose a game like that after giving up 4th and 19 and seeing a kicker hit a 66-yard field goal against me to set the NFL record? No, I couldn't do it. Call me a sore loser all you want, but I just don't think I'd have the intestinal fortitude to face John Harbaugh after that. I'd be too upset. How's this for irony? Justin Tucker has only hit 2 field goals of over 60 yards. Both of those field goals were game winners against the Detroit Lions. Now, granted, the 61-yarder wasn't a last-second field goal, but it did ultimately win the game for the Ravens on Monday Night Football. The Ravens won 18-16. Tucker was responsible for all 18 of Baltimore's points. I'd make fun of the Lions for being a cursed franchise, and they are, but I'm a Jets fan. What do I have to brag about? What's the saying? Don't throw stones in glass houses? Yeah, I'll refrain from doing that. So instead I'll talk about Falcons-Giants. Another game that ended on a last-second field goal. Now that means two things. The first one is, the game that I just spoke about, Ravens-Lions, ended in a last-second field goal. But the second thing that it means is, in back-to-back weeks, the Giants have lost on last-second field goals. Not for nothing, but before Joe Judge got to the Giants, he was the Patriots special teams coordinator. The fact that the Giants have lost back-to-back games on last-second field goals tells you all you need to know about Joe Judge. He is inept. He is overrated. He lied to all of you. Comes in saying the right things. Doesn't practice what he preaches. The stuff about the discipline. You know what? It means nothing. Alright, we're going to be like the Patriots. We're going to win like the Patriots. We're going to be conditioned like the Patriots. I've seen it fail before. And you know what? It's failing with the Giants. This was predictable. It was a terrible hire from the outset. Both New York football teams suck. They went winless in the month of September. Yay, another long football season in the biggest media market in the world, in the headquarters of the NFL. Roger Goodell has to love that. Again, I feel like people aren't focusing enough on Daniel Jones's shortcomings, because I hold him responsible for this loss. The reality is the Giants' defense did their job. You hold the Falcons to just 17 points, you should win this game. Let's see what Daniel Jones did. That's interesting. 1st and goal from the 8-yard line. The Giants have to settle for a field goal. Surely that's not going to happen again, right? Not in the red zone. 1st and 10 from the Falcons' 17. A muffed snap. A false start. Giants have to settle for another field goal. Oh, hallelujah. The Giants scored a touchdown in the 4th quarter. Yay, they drove down the field. Congratulations. Let's see what happened after that. The Giants' defense gives up a touchdown drive that takes up more than half the quarter. Can't get on him, though, because it's hard to play defense for that long. For the most part, they played well. I'm not going to get on Patrick Graham for this loss. There's another fumble on the drive afterwards. There was holding by Nate Solder on the same play. The only reason that the Giants were really in this game was because of stupid penalties from the Falcons, even on the touchdown drive. You had 1st and goal at the 8. The reason you had 1st and goal at the 1 after that resulted in Saquon Barkley running it in for the score was because Foster Moreau committed DPI. Then Moreau commits another DPI, extends the drive a little bit, the last drive of the game for the Giants. Again, the Giants' offense really couldn't get anything going. Their best play was a Foster Moreau pass interference call. Then Matt Ryan drives down the field. Younghoe Koo kicks the game-winning field goal. On Eli Manning Day, the Giants lose the same way that Eli Manning did many times. Last-second field goals. This has been going on for years, the heartbreaking last-second losses. I mean, it's just a joke. Here's a newsflash for you. The Giants hierarchy lied to you. John Mara has done a terrible job with this football team. He trusted Dave Gettleman. Gettleman has proven to be inept. Joe Judge has proven to be inept. Daniel Jones has proven to be inept. You can't lose on Eli Manning Day. You just can't do it. Especially to a bad Falcons team. I mean, I gotta tell you, I'm looking at the Giants' schedule right now. I'm having a tough time finding winnable games for them. I'm not 100% sold on the Saints, but I don't see them losing their first game back at the Superdome. Cowboys, no. Rams, no. Panthers, probably not. The only winnable games may be the 2 Eagles games and the Dolphins game. It doesn't look good, Giants fans. You're just as much an embarrassment to New York as the Jets are. Moving on now to Chargers-Chiefs. A big statement win by the Chargers. They just thoroughly outplayed the Chiefs in this game. Justin Herbert was 1,000,000 times better than Patrick Mahomes. Brandon Staley had some questionable clock management. There's no question about that. But the Chargers won. So give Staley credit. And give Joe Lombardi credit, too. The offensive coordinator for the Chargers. I mean, that clock management, the thing is, since it worked, no one cares, but if it didn't work, if Mahomes could have worked Mahomes magic, we're talking about it. Mahomes throws an interception with under 2 minutes left. The Chargers get the ball at their own 41. The game is tied at this point. So everyone is thinking they're just going to get the ball into field goal range and try for a last-second field goal. It's a lot easier to do that than it is to play for a last-second touchdown, and you don't want to give Mahomes the ball back, right? See, the thing is, though, the Chargers don't have a great kicker. Their kicker is Tristan Vizcaino, who was playing in just his 4th NFL game yesterday, and really hasn't looked like the second coming of Nate Kading. Remember him? In the Cowboys game, he missed a 44-yard field goal that ultimately would have given the Chargers a chance to win the game in overtime. And in yesterday's game, he missed 2 extra points. So I can understand Brandon Staley not having a lot of faith in Vizcaino. But wouldn't you still rather give him the chance to win the game than to trust your defense to stop Patrick Mahomes? I mean, it's tough. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I mean, let's assume for a minute that Mahomes was able to work some Mahomes magic and the Chiefs win that game in the last second. Staley's going to be asked why he didn't play for the last second field goal. He can't say that he didn't trust his kicker. He's not going to say that. I mean, how does that look if you're Tom Telesco, the Chargers GM? You've got the coach criticizing the kicker, then immediately Telesco needs to find a new kicker? That's hard to do. Good kickers are hard to come by. Vizcaino isn't great, but he's not Kari Vedvik. The reality is there was logic to what Staley did. Again, if it doesn't work, it's criticized. But since it worked, you can understand the logic. He trusted his defense, which had already picked off 2 Mahomes passes. Granted, not on Mahomes, bad plays by the receivers, terrible drops. But they made Mahomes look human. I mean, you saw it on the sidelines. Mahomes was ticked off. You don't see that type of emotion from him. So Staley trusted his defense over his kicker. Yeah, he's going to go for the touchdown, help out my fantasy team in the process. I have Mike Williams in my Dynasty League. And he's going to trust that his defense can stop Patrick Mahomes from scoring a touchdown in the final 32 seconds. And you know what? He was right. The Hail Mary by Mahomes didn't even reach the end zone. The ball was at the Chargers' 49. So by the time Mahomes drops back and steps up in the pocket and adjusts his body to throw a rocket, let's call it about 55 yards. Mahomes can throw a 55-yard pass. I mean, I'm not talking about a pass where Tyreek Hill catches it on a screen and just runs 55 yards down the field with his cheetah speed. No, I'm talking a pass that travels 55 yards through the air. I have seen Mahomes do that. He has that arm strength. He didn't even get the ball to the end zone. I mean, Mahomes wasn't great yesterday. I'm not knocking Mahomes. He's still the best player in the NFL. And the Chargers defense is really, really good. Give Brandon Staley and Ronaldo Hill a ton of credit. But is it time for a little bit of concern with the Chiefs? You look at the standings now. Through just about the first month of the season, the Chiefs are in last place in the AFC West. Think about it. They're only 1 game better than the Jets. I mean, the reality is the Chiefs haven't looked great. Their win against the Browns wasn't incredibly convincing. They lost to the Ravens and they lost to the Chargers. I mean, I think it's time for a little bit of a conversation here. Do the Chiefs need to make a change on defense? Are they relying too much on Mahomes to work late game magic? I think these are fair questions. Again, we're basically through the first month of the season. Okay, it's time to ask these questions. I'm not saying that the Chiefs aren't going to make the playoffs. Okay, it wouldn't surprise me if the Chiefs rattled off 14 straight wins. Okay, they are that talented. But I feel like they really need a dominating performance against the Eagles to right the ship. Because I'm not sold on the Eagles at all. Dominate them, eviscerate them. I don't want to hear any of this trap game nonsense. Win that game by at least 3 touchdowns. Moving on now to Cardinals-Jaguars. I spoke about the great play by Jamal Agnew. It is an iconic moment. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly advise you to search it out. I'll say this, that was a really bad decision by Cliff Kingsbury. Like, on the surface, you understand the logic. Matt Prater, at that point in time, held the record for longest field goal in NFL history, a 64-yarder. So sure, give him a chance to hit a 68-yarder. The thing is, though, it's in Denver, though, where the balls just carry more. Don't you watch baseball? To expect Prater to hit a 68-yard field goal in Jacksonville, it just wasn't going to happen. Now look, if Agnew doesn't return that for a touchdown, we're not talking about this right now. It's just a missed field goal. Okay. It's on the long list of forgotten NFL plays. But because the Cardinals' field goal unit was so incredibly inept on that return, we're talking about it. 2 missed tackles, letting the Jaguars dominate the right side of the field, getting all their blockers there. I mean, that is just dreadful. I mean, I tweeted this out. Cliff Kingsbury is probably the most overrated head coach in the NFL. And I stand by that tweet. Even though the Cardinals won 31-19, they outscored the Jaguars 24-6. I am not sold on Kingsbury. The only thing that I will give Cliff Kingsbury credit for is making the tough decision to move on from Josh Rosen for Kyler Murray. Because if Kingsbury had said, I'm going to roll with Rosen, we're going to take Nick Bosa, or we're going to trade down, no one would have begrudged him for that. But he made the really tough decision to draft Murray, despite the fact that there was a real chance he could play for the Oakland Athletics. And despite the fact that he's on the shorter side and was a one-year wonder, coming out of Oklahoma, Kingsbury drafted him. Great decision. Fantastic decision. And I'll give Kingsbury credit for developing Murray. Okay, I don't want to say that Kyler Murray wouldn't have been very good. I don't know if I'd use the word great to describe him yet. Let's say very good without Kingsbury. But there's no question that Kingsbury helped a lot. Okay, I will give Kingsbury credit for what he did at the quarterback position. But there is more to being a head coach than that. If all you can do is scout quarterbacks and develop them, become a quarterbacks coach. Because you've made some really questionable decisions as a head coach in this league. I mean, not for nothing, losing that last game of the season to the Rams last year, ruining your team's playoff hopes, I've got a tough time moving past that. Until you get to the playoffs, that's gonna linger in my mind. And that field goal return very easily could have been the difference in this game. But give the defense credit for sniffing out the trick play and returning it to the house for a pick six that gave the Cardinals the lead. They never relinquish it. See, I have a big question about the Cardinals. And it's a question that we'll never be able to answer. How much of the Cardinals' success is due to Kingsbury? I understand that he's the head coach, but he's made some head-scratching decisions along the way. I'm not sold on him yet. Do something in the playoffs. Moving on now to Bears-Browns. An absolutely anemic performance by the Bears. This is why Matt Nagy didn't want to start Justin Fields. I mean, look, I understand that Nagy didn't call a good game. You've got to roll Fields out more. You've got to give him some help and protection, whether it's leave tight ends in or design some quick releases, but a 6 for 20 performance for just 68 passing yards and 9 sacks. I don't care if it's your first NFL start or not. That is a dreadful performance by Justin Fields. Fields had a quarterback rating of 41.3. To put that into perspective, Zach Wilson, whose team yesterday got shut out, had a quarterback rating of 42.6. So Fields was worse than Wilson. Not by much, but he was worse. You want to criticize Nagy for not rolling Fields out? Okay, I get that. You want to criticize Nagy for not developing Fields to the point that he could be better than that performance we saw yesterday? I understand that, but realize Nagy never wanted to start Fields in the first place. Then again, I understand the counter to that. Well, Nagy has shown that he's been able to develop quarterbacks. I mean, his claim to fame is making Mitchell Trubisky look competent. So if you can do that with Trubisky, you should be able to do that with Fields. The fact that he didn't is a bad look for him. I mean, I like Nagy. This was a bad game for him, and I'm not saying that he's Mike Ditka, but I think Nagy is getting a little too much of the blame. Here's a crazy idea. Maybe the quarterback can be better than 6 for 20 for 68 yards. The 9 sacks I would really need to study to see if he could have avoided them somehow. I think it's safe to say that at least one was his fault. I mean, now there are rumblings that Nick Foles could actually start next week against the Lions. Dalton's still out with a knee injury. Fields hurt his hand a little bit, but because he was so inept, you've got to consider it if you're Nagy. Do you start Nick Foles? I mean, the thing is, Nagy's not an idiot. I'm sure he's heard all the criticism. He knows that he needs to win sooner rather than later. If he beats the Lions, the Bears are 2-2. Not great by any stretch, but not terrible either. I do think Nagy's been given a bad rap. I understand that the Bears have scored just 40 points through 3 games. That's the lowest total in the NFC. And it's the second lowest mark in the NFL behind just the Jets. I totally get that. But when you're rolling out a game manager and a rookie who needs a little more seasoning than people thought, how much can I really get on you? I'm not saying that Nagy's great, but I wouldn't call him Abe Gibron either. There actually is a trade to tell you about, and it's pretty noteworthy. The Jaguars traded C.J. Henderson and a 5th rounder to the Panthers for Dan Arnold and a 3rd rounder. So the Darnold to Arnold connection is dead. And C.J. Henderson, the 9th overall pick in not this past draft, but the draft before, the most recent draft that Urban Meyer didn't participate in for the Jaguars, is now a Panther. I don't like trading Henderson. I'm a big fan of his. I think he had a ton of potential coming out of Florida. I mean, if you'll recall, in that draft, I really wanted him to slip to 11. I wanted the Jets to take him. When he went off the board at 9, okay, take Becton, take Wirfs, take Judy, take Lamb, but I really wanted C.J. Henderson. Now, granted, he has not gotten off to a good start in the NFL. Last year, he had just a 57.9 overall grade, according to Pro Football Focus. This year, it's been even worse at 51.5. He didn't play at all yesterday, although that's probably because the Jaguars knew that they had a trade in place involving him. You don't want him to get hurt in that game and then the Panthers back out of the deal. But I think it's safe to say that with Urban Meyer in control of the Jaguars, Henderson wasn't gonna work out. So now he's with the Panthers, a team that just developed a big need at corner, seeing as though J.C. Horn broke his foot on Thursday. You end up replacing the 8th overall pick in this past NFL draft with the 9th overall pick from the draft prior. Kind of interesting how things like that work out. The reality is this trade makes sense for both teams. Like I just said, the Panthers needed a corner. They got one with a ton of potential in Henderson. The Jaguars also really wanted to move on from him. If the new man in charge, Urban Meyer, thinks that Henderson is going to flame out of the league, sure, cut your losses and move on from him. It's not a good look for the organization, but not for nothing, getting a 3rd rounder and Dan Arnold is actually a pretty solid haul. The Jaguars really needed a tight end. You take a look at their tight end core. It's James O'Shaughnessy, who's currently on IR. Chris Manhertz, who isn't that good. Luke Farrell, who isn't that good. And Jacob Hollister, who isn't that good. You sensing a theme here? Arnold isn't awful. Through 3 games with the Panthers, he had 7 catches for 84 yards. Last year for the Cardinals, he had 31 catches for 438 yards and 4 touchdowns. No one's going to mistake Arnold for Travis Kelce anytime soon. But he's better than any tight end the Jaguars had. So, look at it from the Jaguars' end. You got rid of someone who you think is a bust, and you moved up 2 rounds in the draft, and addressed a big position of need. Meanwhile, the Panthers address a big position of need and now opened up more playing time for Tommy Tremble, someone who they're really high on. The reality is this is an even trade. I don't like trading Henderson because I do think he's going to work out, but I understand the logic from the Jaguars' end. I really can't say that either team won or lost this trade. It really makes sense for both sides. Alright, now I'll give you some college football Valk talk. And I'll start with Notre Dame, Wisconsin. A game that was closer than the score would indicate. Through 3 quarters, the game was tied at 10. I mean, within the first 40 seconds or so of the 4th quarter, Colin Larsh had hit a 27-yard field goal to give the Badgers the lead. So you're thinking, okay, Wisconsin just may pull this out at home. You combine that with the fact that Jack Cohn was knocked out of the game and the Fighting Irish had to put Drew Pine in, you're feeling really good about Wisconsin's chances. But then the luck of the Irish shined bright. You had the big kick return touchdown to give Notre Dame the lead. Then Wisconsin fumbled the ball away. That resulted in a Notre Dame touchdown. You had an interception that resulted in a Notre Dame field goal. Then you had 2 pick sixes. Graham Mertz, someone who I really liked entering this year, really gave this game away to Notre Dame. Like, think about it from Wisconsin's end. You decide you're going to roll with Mertz, so Jack Cohn transfers to continue his dream of playing college football and maybe one day playing in the NFL. So he goes to Notre Dame, the two teams go up against each other. If you're Mertz, you've got to show to Wisconsin that they made the right decision, and you complete just 18 of 41 passes, and you throw 4 picks, 2 of which were returned by Notre Dame to the house. It's unreal. You can't do that. Through 3 games, Mertz has thrown just 1 touchdown. Not for nothing, but if he can't throw a touchdown pass against Eastern Michigan, that's a bad look for him. Against Penn State, he was dreadful. Against Notre Dame, he was inept. Wisconsin should have won this game. Jack Cohn leaves with an injury. So in comes Drew Pine, who no one knows anything about? Great, the Badgers are going to win, right? No! It was just a dreadful game by Wisconsin. I was really disappointed in them. Through 3 quarters, they were solid. I wasn't impressed with Mertz, but hey, tied at 10 through 3 quarters. If Mertz comes alive in the 4th quarter, who cares? But for Mertz to give the game away, that doesn't work for me. If you're Paul Chryst, you may need to consider making some changes. Moving on now to Texas A&M versus Arkansas. I picked the Razorbacks in this game. Even though A&M was favored, believe it or not, I actually know a little bit about sports. Arkansas just thoroughly outplayed Texas A&M. What Sam Pittman has done with that program in a really short period of time is nothing short of incredible. KJ Jefferson was really impressive. Traylon Smith was really impressive. Traylon Burks had 6 catches for 167 yards and a touchdown. The big story to me, though, was the defense of Arkansas. Really limiting a really good running back in Isaiah Spiller. Spiller had 1 big run. That was it. It was a 67-yarder. You take that run out of the equation. He had just 11 carries for 28 yards. It doesn't get much worse than that. An outstanding job by Trey Williams, John Ridgway, and the entire Razorbacks D-line. Grant Morgan was really good. Bumper Poole was good. Then again, Bumper Poole is always good. Pun intended. That's why I said that. Ladarius Bishop was good. Simeon Blair was good. Let me tell you, this Arkansas team is for real. They deserve to be ranked 8 by the AP. In fact, you can make the argument that they deserve to be higher. I would put them ahead of Cincinnati. I really would. Maybe even Oklahoma, too. Because Oklahoma didn't look good against WVU. I love this Razorbacks team. I don't know if you can look at them as a sleeper team, but they're my dark horse to win the CFP. Moving on now to Clemson losing to NC State in double overtime. And we need to face facts. DJ Uiagalelei is not good. For the first time in 97 weeks, the Tigers are out of the top 10 in the AP poll. They're 25th in the poll. Let me tell you, there are a lot of teams in the nation that deserve to be ranked ahead of Clemson. The list is too long to go through. This is a Clemson team that started third in the nation. Ever since then, it's been all downhill. An unconvincing win to Georgia Tech, a loss to an inferior NC State team. Let me tell you, Clemson's CFP hopes are dead. There's no way that they're making it now. The ACC probably isn't going to make it. Do you really see Wake Forest or Boston College in the CFP? DJ is going to run that program into the ground. And don't give me this nonsense that this is his first year starting. I've got to cut him some slack. No, I absolutely don't. You remember what his predecessor, Trevor Lawrence, did in his freshman year? He went undefeated. He destroyed Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl and destroyed Alabama in the national title game. You can make a very strong argument that DJ should be benched. Maybe you let him finish out the year. Maybe. But if you want to be back in the CFP title picture next year, move on from DJ. I remember reading a very early 23 mock draft that had DJ going first overall. No way. No way DJ goes first overall now. In fact, I wouldn't even be stunned if he went undrafted. Clemson may want to move on from him after this year. Look to the transfer portal. See if there's a big freshman recruit you can get. Because DJ isn't the guy. It's just that simple. Moving on now to ISU Baylor. A really, really great game. A close game. An exciting game all throughout. ISU was the better offensive team, make no mistake about that. But Baylor stepped up when they needed to defensively. This was, in my opinion, the best college game of the week. You've got to give Brock Purdy a ton of credit. He completed 2/3 of his passes for 263 yards and a touchdown. Yes, he threw an interception on the big 2-point conversion. Totally get that. That's a bad look for him. But the reality is that play was doomed to fail from the beginning. The snap was botched. I don't know if the center just had a brain cramp or if Purdy had a brain cramp, but he just tossed it up, hoping that one of his guys could make a play, and Baylor made a play. Like I said, Baylor stepped up when they needed to. But Breece Hall was outstanding. 27 carries for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 5 catches for 51 yards and a touchdown. Chase Allen was really good, 7 catches for 98 yards. Charlie Kohler was really good, 5 catches for 71 yards. And Xavier Hutchinson had 4 catches for 42 yards. ISU was the better offensive team. Make no mistake about it. But like I said, Baylor stepped up when they needed to. Garmin Randolph was the guy who came down with the interception. Kalen Barnes was really good. Siaki Ika was good. Gabe Hall, Jalen Petre, TJ Franklin, JT Woods, etc., etc. All these guys stepped up for Baylor. Give Dave Aranda a ton of credit. When Matt Rule left for the Panthers, the Bears went 2-7, and people thought, oh, Aranda's terrible, Rule was the only reason that team was good. Aranda didn't let that affect them. Baylor's undefeated right now. Make no mistake about it. Aranda's a good coach. You just need more than a year to bring in your guys and institute your system. Moving on now to KSU versus Oklahoma State. A game that was really over in the first half. The Cowboys absolutely tamed the Wildcats, again, pun intended. Spencer Sanders completed just under 2/3 of his passes for 344 yards. He was responsible for 3 touchdowns. Jalen Warren had 27 carries for 123 yards. Tay Martin had 9 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. Oklahoma State, from the outset, looked like the better team. The reality is, Kansas State just isn't that good. I didn't think they should have been ranked to begin with. And you're going to see that all throughout this month. They're going to get creamed by Oklahoma on Saturday. Iowa State is better than them. Texas Tech is probably better than them. And you can make the argument that TCU is better than them. This is just a bad Wildcats team. I'm not a big Chris Kleiman fan. I'm not a big fan of what he's doing. I'll say this, the offensive line has a couple talented tackles in Christian Duffy and Cooper Beebe, but that's about it. It's hard to get excited about this team if you're a Wildcats fan. Even if you're just an outside observer, you can't get excited about it. It wouldn't surprise me if Kansas State lost their bowl game. Assuming they even make a bowl game. I'm not sold on them at all. The last game that I want to talk about is UNC versus Georgia Tech. An absolute drubbing by the Yellow Jackets on the Tar Heels. I mean, not for nothing, but you've got to give Sam Howell some help. Look, Sam Howell's a really good quarterback and is probably the favorite to be the first quarterback taken in the NFL draft at this very moment. But the reality is he needs help. And he really didn't get much help from his offensive line. Brian Anderson, Marcus McKeithen, and Jordan Tucker were really bad. Asim Richards was okay. Joshua Izudu was solid, but that's about it. Ty Chandler was absolutely useless. He averaged less than 3 yards a carry. You've got Howell trying to spread the wealth, but only Emery Simmons was really able to step up. He had 3 catches for 110 yards. Everyone else really underwhelmed. Look, you've got a really, really good quarterback in Howell. And I understand the theory of if he's great, he'll elevate his teammates. The thing is, though, I wouldn't use the word great to describe Howell. I'd say very good. I think Sam Howell can have a good NFL career. Maybe very good. Maybe like a Kirk Cousins type. But not great. This isn't anything against Howell, but if you're relying on him to do everything by himself, you're going to lose. And when you get more than doubled up in the second half, 32-15, you're going to get steamrolled. This was a dreadful game by the UNC defense. No one impressed me in that unit. I'll give a shout out to the front seven of the Georgia Tech defense. Guys like Digimon Brooks, I'm sure I butchered that first name, Quez Jackson, Jordan Dominic, Jared Ivey, Charlie Thomas, and Ayindi LA all had really good games. They really manhandled the UNC offensive line. An offensive line that's usually pretty good. It's kind of funny. You think about the coaching matchup of Jeff Collins versus Mac Brown, you'd think that Brown would have that all day, right? Not on Saturday. Jeff Collins thoroughly outcoached Mac Brown. He's got to show some results sooner rather than later, but this was a good start. New York Yankees show comes your way tonight. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I'm Jacob Valk. And always remember, if you disagree with me, you're wrong.